So our next session is going to address America's opportunity in the global Islamic economy. And by Islamic economies, I'm referring to essentially the developing world here. We've got Muslim-majority emerging markets in Indonesia, Turkey, Malaysia, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and some others. We're talking about the lifestyle sectors of halal food, Islamic finance, modest clothing, and travel. They're becoming an increasingly important part of the global halal opportunities. What we see is that as America is trying to get further growth in its economy, we want to look at how can it benefit from the rise of the global Islamic economy. There's indeed much global attention, but the U.S. is clearly lagging behind. When I've got private conversations with people, I'm basically saying it seems like we're dead in the water. Everything that's going on is going on out there. What is it that we can possibly do? China, for example, is developing a halal hub in the northwest region with more than 120 companies, and Dubai is establishing itself as the global Islamic economy. The British government has established an Islamic finance task force intending to rejuvenate the UK's Sharia-compliant industry after the conclusion of the 9th World Islamic Economic Forum, which was held in London. And so we want to know, what is it that America can do to promote its own market as well as capture Islamic capital?
So that was an introductory video that was produced for a major event that was held in Dubai last year called the Global Islamic Economy Summit. And like I was saying, this is the first time that this event, AMCC, is introducing this topic around the global context or the Islamic lifestyle economies globally. And we have heard earlier in the last session the theme of how the halal food sector or the community is evolving from an affinity to a values-based aspect. We've heard about the opportunity in education and other spaces as well. So this is the third big area that is the broader context. And I'm delighted to have with us a very distinguished and qualified panel to speak to us on this topic. To my right, beginning to the rightmost, is our dear brother Aamir Rehman, a New York native, but a globetrotter. I believe he is the, first of all, I believe he's been probably in 4 or 5 different countries in the last 2 weeks, because I think when we were having calls with him, he was in Brunei, Malaysia, Dubai, and in 2 days, and here now. So he's the managing director of Fajr Capital, a pioneering Islamic private equity firm based out of Dubai, and doing incredible work. And I'm sure we'll be getting very interesting insights from him. And next to him is Michael Looft. He's the regional director, Europe and Asia for Kiva, who most of you would know is a global icon now and a pioneer in the microfinance space. So wonderful to have him. To my left, and it's going to start making me hungry with all the earlier talk of halal food, but one of my personal favorite brands, Elevation Burger, CEO, is with us, Rick Altizer. We're really delighted to have you, and their experience is a fascinating story of how Elevation Burger has found halal, so to say. So look forward to his perspective. And finally, Mr. Ziad Elkurjie from Patchi, USA, and he brings an incredibly amazing and strong perspective from a brand that's succeeding now in the US as well. So please join me and welcome all of them. What I'd like to do is basically take a few minutes to have opening remarks from each of them, and then this will be an interactive discussion. I'll welcome questions from the audience as well, but first we'll start with Aamir, who will have some initial comments.
Well, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah, Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you so much, Rafi and colleagues, for the very generous introduction. Fajr Capital is a private equity group. We're based in Dubai, and we're very fortunate to have both sovereign and private investors from throughout the Islamic world. So we have roughly half of our capital from sovereign wealth funds and roughly half from private sources. The sovereign investors are from the countries mentioned actually by Rafi-uddin. So the Abu Dhabi Investment Council, the government of Brunei, Darussalam, and the government of Malaysia through a vehicle called Khazana National Berhad. And so those are our sovereign investors, and our private investors are from Saudi Arabia, and from the region more broadly, including the HSBC Group, which is where I used to work. They're a very small investor with us. And we are very much focused on investing in Islamic financial services, as well as a broad range of sectors in the GCC, Turkey, and Southeast Asia. So that's by way of background on Fajr Capital. I prepared just a couple of slides here for perspective for this forum that I would put forward and would welcome any comments or questions on this as we advance the discussion. The basic first point I'd like to make is the importance of a producer mindset. I think the recognizing the power of the American Muslim community as consumers is very important. But there's perhaps even more power in the role that we play and we can play as producers. And when I say producers, I mean in four basic ways. And a lot of this was touched on very nicely in the first panel. But first, in terms of business leadership, there is a dire need for business leadership from an ethics and values-based perspective that we see across many sectors. So today we're focusing on what we call Muslim lifestyle sectors, but really these values are applicable very broadly. So the first point I would make is in terms of business leadership for Muslim Americans, it's very important that we be there, be present, and be involved in that. Second, in terms of investments and ownership, it's very important to invest and to own things. And the power of ownership is very fundamental. When we at Fajr Capital established our business in 2007, we thought through a whole lot of business models. And the one that we felt was most appropriate was a private equity investment model because we felt that ownership is very critical for having a positive impact on enterprises. And a very small example I give is that we invest in infrastructure. And if you're familiar with the Islamic finance sector, a lot of the sukuk market is debt financing for infrastructure projects. However, it's very rare for Sharia-compliant investors to have the equity ownership of these projects. And we felt that, number one, to drive more debt financing opportunities to these sector, you need to have the ownership. So by owning the projects, you can drive the debt structure and therefore invite more Islamic investors. That's one reason. And second, more from a vision and values perspective, it was important that Islamic finance be involved in infrastructure because building out countries is a very noble and virtuous thing to do. So investment and ownership are very important. And we had some previous discussion, I think it was Hatem, who touched on the importance of endowments and awqaf, and I think that's critically important. And one message I would have for this audience is that scale is important, but it's not everything. So even small-scale investments and small-scale endowments and small-scale philanthropy can lead to many good things. In terms of the other 2 points here, cultural production is eminently important. And it has, you'll see in the next slide as we talk about the role of American Muslims, I think that cultural production in terms of driving our narrative, driving the way in which Islam is discussed, Muslims are discussed, but not only in sort of news and documentaries, but also in entertainment media is fundamentally crucial. And last, of course, community service, as was said very well before. So I think while it's important to recognize that as consumers we're powerful, as producers we have a lot to bring, and really our moral vision is one of contribution and net contribution more so than drawing on resources. The next slide, and this is really the thrust of the contributions I'd like to make, is in terms of how America can play a role in this vibrant global Islamic economy. And I'm going to have to look over here so I can see it more smoothly, easily. But the first one is, as I said, as a source of innovation and ideas and business models. Now, one of the things that you saw the video referred to the Global Islamic Economy Summit that took place in Dubai last year. Now, one thing that was striking about that is 4 of the award recipients, including Michael, who's sitting to my left, were US-based or America-based institutions. So Kiva was one, Saffron Road, about which we heard, IFANCA, which is the Food and Nutritional Council, and Times 5, which is a Canadian company. These were all recognized as being innovative, leading Islamic economy businesses, and they're not in Muslim majority markets. And this is not to mention other award winners from New Zealand, etc. And another point which is really critical is even businesses that may be based in the Middle East or Southeast Asia or elsewhere in the Islamic world often have very strong inspiration from US-based business models. So it's very important that we recognize the role that America can play in terms of business innovation and business models. In terms of the second point, a home for investment capital. We have huge advantages here in the United States. One is that this is still the largest economy in the world. It's the most investor-friendly economy in the world. Muslim economies, those who have investment surpluses, generate those surpluses in dollars, US dollar-denominated assets, and therefore they need to invest in dollars, and we can do that here. And by way of reference, the value of Islamic or Muslim country investments in the US far exceeds the value of the Islamic finance industry manyfold. So if you assume there are about 2 trillion or so of GCC sovereign wealth fund investments and about $1.5 trillion Islamic finance in total, it's very safe to say that there's a comparable amount of assets invested by only sovereign wealth funds in the US compared to the entire Islamic finance industry. So there's certainly a lot of opportunity for that. Lastly, 3 very quick points. One is sources of human capital. Here in the States, we contribute both talent and educational opportunities. It's amazing, as I have the good fortune of interacting with many leaders from around the Muslim world, many of them have very positive experiences of the US through their education. And that's an asset we need to leverage. In terms of linkage to global platforms, that's crucial. So having American companies involved in the Islamic economy gives access to many, many markets, and it also gives a credibility which is extremely important. As mentioned, I used to work at HSBC in their Islamic finance business, and before that there was Citibank that entered Islamic finance, and that sends an important message. And the last point, which I think is really the fundamental one, is in terms of our view vis-a-vis business ethics and the holistic perspective that Americans bring to business. And I think that's critical because as the Islamic economy develops, it's not just about meeting the minimum requirements of religious law, but it's about the ethics, it's about how we treat labor, it's about gender equity, it's about the responsibility to the environment, and it's about transparency. And all of these things I think we as Americans have to offer to the Islamic economy. So I think there's a lot we can contribute, and I look forward to the US continuing to play a very pivotal role as the Islamic economy evolves.
Excellent. We're going to have very many follow-up questions to that, Aamir. Next, I'd like to have Michael reflect or share his initial comments.
First of all, thank you, Aamir, for the shout out to Kiva. I really appreciate that.
I think they're just loading up a couple of. There we go.
Oh, great.
That's the right one.
A third of the world does not have access to formal finance. In the Middle East, which is slightly bigger than the US, about 350 million people, 4 out of 5 people do not have access to finance. And when you look at microfinance itself, who seeks to alleviate poverty through the access to finance, the Middle East represents actually the lowest amount in terms of portfolio, which is striking, particularly given that the youth unemployment rate is more than double than what it is globally. So there's a big need in the Middle East. Now at Kiva, how many people here know about Kiva? Great, thank you. Now how many people here have made a loan on Kiva? Great, thank you so much. My hope is, and I have something on the next slide, my hope is that everybody here can make a loan on Kiva today. Now, Kiva's been around for 9 years, and we've moved over $600 million in microloans to 81 countries around the world. What does that mean? So Kiva's mission is to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty, and we operate a crowdfunding website that allows our partners, we work with partners, and we have about 300 partners now in these 81 countries around the world. They post a picture and a story of somebody who needs a loan. Now this could be, for example, somebody in Lebanon who needs something for his shop. Maybe it's trade goods to sell. And that loan is posted up onto our website, and people like you and me can go and make a $25 loan. And what's great about this is it's interest-free. And taking a page from the what we've been talking about today is pushing values-based financing into the mainstream. And so with this model of very small loans, some of them only $150, $200, and some have gone up to a couple $1,000s. We've been able to facilitate over $600 million in loans. Now, in the Middle East, we've been able to facilitate about $40 million. We can go to the next slide. And $4 million of that has been Sharia-compliant lending. Now, myself before I came to Kiva, I was a student of Islam, and so it's something very passionate about when I came to Kiva is trying to bring Sharia-compliant lending to Kiva. So we do a lot of murabaha. It's the bulk of what we do. We also do other types of products like ijara and salam, musawama, and Kard Hassan. Kard Hassan is one of the things that really, for me, epitomizes our values-based approach, and that's interest-free loans that go all the way to the borrower, whether it's a widow or somebody who's in extreme poverty, with absolutely no service fees, nothing. It's entirely free. And that's one of the things that I'm very proud of that Kiva has done. Now, Kiva's also launched kiva.org/Middle East, and I encourage anybody, if you happen to be on your smartphone right now, to please, you can make a loan. You don't actually have to put $25 into our system. You now have, through the benefit and generosity of Grameen Jameel Foundation, you can actually make a free loan. So anybody, I encourage you to go to our link, and you can make a free loan, Sharia-compliant loan to somebody in the Middle East today. Thank you.
Excellent. Fascinating, and we'll be coming back to this. In the meantime, as Michael suggested, the link is up, and hopefully you spend a few dollars there for a good cause. So next to our distinguished guest, Mr. Rick, if we can hear your wonderful story.
Thank you, Rafi. It's an honor to be with you all today. I'm learning so much about the Islamic community and about marketing to this key consumer segment. I adopted for the theme as a way of introducing you to our brand and to our franchise a great noted American philosopher, Dr. Seuss. And the format of my brief presentation is from here to there to everywhere. And as you know, in Dr. Seuss's famous bestseller, the Redfish series, he talked about from here to there, from there to here, funny things are happening everywhere, or funny things are everywhere. And in God's providence, I'm here as a Southern Baptist from Greenville, South Carolina, speaking to the opinion leaders and business leaders from an important Muslim conference, and I'm just honored to be here. It's just that's the first funny thing I wanted to point out, and it's a great opportunity for me to learn and to know you all. So many of the values that have been referenced here today are so resonant with me as an owner and CEO of Elevation Burger. Talking about the values that led Whole Foods to expand their presence in Sharia-compliant groceries, and hearing about your story again at Kiva and these other investments is just a great thing. So what I want to introduce you to first is the star of our show at Elevation Burger, which is the grass-fed organic beef. Yep, that's it. That's the star. It's part of the reason I'm here. I fell in love with this hamburger, and that is grass-fed organic beef. It is halal, and 6 months aged cheddar, and our potato roll, which is lightly toasted, and you can see behind that the co-star, our fresh fries, which are fried in Bertolli's olive oil. And this is the centerpiece of our very simple business model. Our founder, Hans Hess, in 2005 wanted to bring a better burger, an elevated burger, and an elevated guest experience to America initially, and to his family and to families in his community in Virginia. And he invented the Elevation Burger and sourced this amazing organic grass-fed beef from literally the best producers in the world, who, by the way, in their own quest for quality and their own value-based business, chose to harvest the beef in a halal fashion. And Hans was not on a halal drive or mission or strategy. He was trying to find the best organic grass-fed beef that was all those things that Errol was talking about, antibiotic-free, certified organic, GMO-free, all of those things. And a better burger was what he built, and there it is in front of you. Just a quick story about us. Again, we started out from here to there. We started out on a quest for grass-fed, organic, healthy, best-tasting, family-friendly, and we have arrived, and we're still on the journey, but we've landed in a place that we very much appreciate and are enjoying. Halal, vegan. We have products that are paleo, CrossFit sensitive for folks who are focused on their fitness and health. Also folks who have nut allergies and other gluten-free allergies and things like that they're trying to observe in their diet. And go ahead to the next one, Rafi. We were locally owned in Falls Church, Virginia. That's where Hans and April started their first restaurant. And of course, as such, we were 100% based here in the United States. And as the business grew and developed, we had opportunities to expand through a franchise model. And we now have 50 restaurants in 7 countries. And just this year, over half of our revenue, system revenue, comes from the Middle East in the GCC region. And our restaurants in that region are some of our most successful and most famous restaurants. Even today, we were talking about the experiences that our esteemed panel here has had in Dubai and Kuwait and other countries in the Middle East. So that's a bit of our story. And then the piece about everywhere, we're here with you today, and we're happy to be here. Please come by and see us at the booth. We'd love to meet you. But we have restaurants, franchise restaurants here in the United States, all across the East Coast, out as far as Ann Arbor, Michigan, as far south as Austin, Texas, and lots of places in between. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we have restaurants in Kuwait, in Dubai. We have sites under investigation in Abu Dhabi. We have sites in Oman, one site in Oman, several in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and also in Bahrain. So we've also got aspirations. We're looking for partners, franchise partners, or well-qualified investors. We have one under construction in Mexico. We have proposals out for London, Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, and Turkey. And as you were talking about your trip recently to Bahrain, we're also very much interested in looking into key affluent, growing Muslim markets in Southeast Asia, where we can bring our healthy, elevated burger, grass-fed, organic, and also halal to even more communities in the Middle East. So that's a quick triptych of our story at Elevation. I'm honored to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Next, we have with us Ziad, who's the president of Patchi, and I would love to hear a little bit first about Patchi and you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm honored to be at this event, and I'd love to introduce you to Patchi. Patchi is a brand that started 40 years ago in Lebanon. It's a family-owned company that's now in 26 countries, mostly in retail outlets and various brick-and-mortar style boutiques, if you will. We are a chocolate and chocolate gifting company. We specialize in making all-natural chocolate from halal ingredients. This has been the mission since day one from the founder, Mr. Nizar Shukair. And we take our chocolates to produce a premium, all-natural gourmet chocolate. But we don't just stop there. We take it to another level. We wrap it up, we label it, we dress it up, we style it to fit different needs of your lifestyle. So we go into your lifestyle, wherever you are in the world, based on what you're interested in, based on what you're celebrating, based on the season. Is it summer? Is it winter? Is it Ramadan? Is it Diwali? It's an international brand that suits the social aspect and infrastructure of people wherever they are. We specialize in dressing up our chocolates, as I call them, in product designs that we come up with internally in-house. So our production and designs are all actually internally sourced. So we make our own chocolates. We buy all the ingredients, raw materials. We make it to the standards we want. We also make our packaging. So any paperwork, any design, flowers, any accessories, any of the boxes you see, we also have them integrated. So if you know, we basically have done a vertical integration of our production lines in order for us to better control what we deliver, where, and to what style. In that sense, we become a trendsetter in that segment of the product for that market. You see our product designers often going to the shows in Europe to look at the latest fashion trends, for example. What does fashion have to do with chocolate? It has to do with lifestyle, with celebrations, with an expression of what you are trying to say to the gift recipient that you're trying to send your gift to. And that's a very challenging job, because we all are different and we all live in different sections of the world and have different standards and events we're attending to. Some events we specialize in, like the newborn baby. We do bridal of all kinds of events. Of course, we do all types of holidays, and then we do the seasonal collections. On the chocolate side of things, our product takes recipes that actually are aged from very standard or very profound recipes in Europe and in Asia. So we bring in a lot of the nuts, we bring in a lot of the fruits, all the natural ingredients of the growing, and then we basically blend it in with very high quality cocoa. And then soon, later in the day, I'm sure you'll all have a chance to taste some of our products, and then you tell me more about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're all thoroughly hungry for both the main meal and dessert, but we have, I think, a very fascinating set of questions our way, and I will, given the time we have, I will suggest that we do take questions from you as well. But let me start first, and I'll start with Aamir. Actually, I want to start with Rick first, because Rick, your story, I want to link back to Aamir. But, you know, the story of elevation sounds to me that in some ways you stumbled into halal. And as an American brand that was, you know, passionate about the values that you were based on, and as you said, you know, to my surprise or shock in some ways, 50% of your revenues now are from the Middle East, those markets. If you were to how would you have seen this business case? In your case, you stumbled into it. But if someone was to come and make a business case for this market, what would have worked for you? And I ask this because, you know, we'd like to take this story to other brands as well. So what's the business case here that you see, and how would it work for you?
Well, thanks. You know, in hindsight is very helpful and informative. We had a young college student from a commercial family in Kuwait who was a very big fan of our burgers, fries, and shakes. And he literally persisted in, I guess pestering would be the right word, our founder to convince him to take the brand into Kuwait. And this gentleman came to Virginia, worked for 4 months in our restaurants, and exported the brand back to the Middle East. And so we didn't have the benefit of that hindsight at that time. I've only been with the brand the last 7 or 8 months, and it's just been really, really rewarding to travel in the Middle East and go on sales calls with qualified prospects across the GCC and just see their passion for the brand. What I'm learning, though, and I've even heard of the themes come out in the panelists today, is this sort of virtuous convergence and synchrony of core values. You know, Hans, our founder, was very missional. I mean, he was an inventor and an entrepreneur, but it was a very missional thing. He took this organic, grass-fed, healthy product as his calling and wanted to bring this product to the world. And again, it was not intentional that we went towards halal, but we certainly are very, very thankful and very much better informed about the opportunities there. But when you think about the values that have been talked about here, about equity and fairness and sustainability and just driving, you know, even as Errol mentioned, you know, creating an alternative to the fast feeder industry and the factory food complex. I mean, this was all the values that was in the mind of our founder when he created the Elevation Burger concept and the Elevation Burger itself. So I see a lot of a lot of connections. And I think if we had known that then, the trends that were coming with Sharia compliant industry and that food, it would have been a much different kind of approach. But we're very thankful that we are where we are. What I'm learning is that we came at it from the organic, grass-fed, natural, better for you, healthy, and we arrived at halal. And what I'm hearing is that many of you, and the millennials in particular, are coming at it from the opposite direction and seeing the compliance as the gateway or the greens fee, and what they're on is a quest back towards organic, grass-fed, premium, healthy, good-for-you products. And so, like I say, there's that virtuous meeting in the middle where organic burgers are well positioned in that middle ground, and that convergence is very beneficial, I think, to all of us.
That's excellent. So pestering is what started it.
Yeah.
So point to be noted. But really, what worked eventually, the reason was the search for the grass-fed quality process led you to halal, and that's a very strong point for us to sort of continue to build on with the rest of the industry here. I want to follow up now and ask Aamir. You shared a fascinating set of a framework of how Muslims in America can really tap into the global Islamic opportunity as a community here, as well as contributing into the growth of the economy internationally. One of the things that entrepreneurs that come to a conference like this, Muslims, invariably think about when they think about Islamic economy, they think about the dollar that they can get from the Gulf capital. So, and invariably there's a lot of hurt that is faced or false expectations. So I'd like you to comment a little bit about that aspect, because you are sitting in the center of that capital base, the Islamic capital base in the GCC, as well as how can Islamic capital better benefit American economy? Because that's, even though you talk about how much investment already is in this country, but in particular in context of Islamic capital.
Sure. Thanks. If I may just take roughly 30 seconds on Rick's point. I love that ingredients matters. Ingredients matter
Yes.
phrase. Because to me, it really encapsulates the ethics behind this Islamic economy concept, which is when you're consuming something, you need to know where it comes from and how it was dealt with. If it's meat or, even there's again, Rafi, please forgive the digression, but, there's a powerful saying from the Prophet where he talks about a person, peace be upon him, who makes prayer to God and the prayer is not answered because his food is not permissible, his clothes are not permissible, and so on and so forth. And so food, you can understand, okay, maybe it was something impermissible, but how do clothes become impermissible? Well, that's because if you earn your livelihood from an unethical way, or if you steal from people, what have you. So I think, again, ingredients do matter, and that's a very powerful phrase, so thank you for adopting that. Now, to your question, Rafi, on Islamic capital. So as you rightly said, I've already highlighted the vast scale of investment from Muslim-majority markets into the U.S. So I think that point is well covered. With regards to financing Islamic economy initiatives, it's a huge gap, and it's also an opportunity, I would say. But let me explain why it's a gap. It's a gap because most of us GCC-based investors are not very good at early stage investing. So what we do is, for example, our firm, we invest at ticket sizes. So our investment is typically between $25 million to $100 million. In any particular asset, and we like to take minority stakes, which means it's a quite mature business. And it's funny, sometimes people come to us with an early stage business and we say we only make investments of 25 million plus, and they say, that's no problem, we'll take 25 million. But no, it's a challenge that we face, is that how do we get to the earlier stage businesses? And I think the solution to that is really for firms and institutions here, and people like Adnan and others who have experience working with the investment community, to, number one, develop a pipeline of vetted early-stage opportunities and package them in a way that are much more palatable and recognizable to these investors. And also to work with the early-stage investing institutions in this country. Obviously, Silicon Valley is well known, but throughout the United States, we have a good venture capital community. So it's really getting those VCs to appreciate this space and then act as reference investors or kind of lead investors. And I can assure you that if you have, some of the premier Sand Hill Road VCs investing in a certain business, you will find that the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and the Kuwait Investment Authority will be very keen to follow. But simply put, they're not early stage investors, and most of the businesses we see are early stage.
So that answers the question of why it's a lot of startups that are early stage who go and look for Islamic capital are not successful because as they call it, patient capital is not there, and they're seeking more of either more mature established businesses or ones that give them a faster return, such as an infrastructure, real estate project,
Correct.
and so forth.
And it's a skill set, Rafi. It's a skill set that's often lacking, and it's again a matter of strategy. So I think it's simply knowing whenever you go out to raise capital, you need to know what type of investor has the skills and the experience to appreciate what you're offering. And today, our focus in the Middle East is not on early stage investing.
Great. I'm going to switch to Patchi, Ziad. And Patchi is a great success story in terms of a brand that's from the Islamic countries, or at least a Muslim majority country. And one of the things that we at DinarStandard are quite passionate about are why aren't there global brands from the Muslim world? And if you look at the top 100 ranking of global brands in the last even 20 years that Interbrand produces, not one, and not even Emirates, by the way, is on that top 100 global brand rank. So here we have Patchi, that is now a brand that started from Lebanon, and it's going global, and you're succeeding in the U.S. as well. So can you tell us, and I'm flipping the context, but how do we, what makes a brand, what were the struggles, and how are you succeeding in it as a example?
Thank you. In many ways, what I've noticed is that after a few years having to look back at what the U.S. market has provided Patchi is a platform for global awareness and global presence. Patchi is very much well-branded and penetrated in the Middle East, and GCC has the significant market share and the brand loyalty as well. However, what we've done with the project and the venture here, bringing Patchi to the U.S. and to North America in general, we had to really think through as if it's a startup. I've gone through many startups before, and it helped me a lot just taking a little bit, putting aside the fact that it is a global brand, it is very, very well established, it is 40 years, it was 35 years at the time we started. Okay, but where do we start here? And then when I looked at the North American, specifically the US market, I noticed that it's obviously huge, geographic, in terms of geography and in terms of the cultural definition of the different profiles of different consumers. We also looked at the various trends and the competitive nature of the market. It's significantly different. So in essence, what we had to do is do our research, do our diligence, and then we broke it down into multiple dimensions. And those dimensions allowed us to realize where the brand value and the product that we offer, where does it fit in the context of where we want to take our brand into this market. We are about gourmet food, this chocolate, and we are also about lifestyle. So it's a very interesting intersection. So how do you present those out to this very diverse, very spread out market? It's not a local thing. So the bottom line is that while we were looking at, okay, do we go very niche and say, well, we are this Middle East product, or we're this Lebanese product?
Sure.
Or, I mean, a lot of people would advise me, no, stay away from Middle East, stay away from this, stay away from halal. It's like, wait a second. at the end of the day, we reversed it. We kind of went upside down. We said, no. Halal product is a universal product. Chocolate is a universal product too. Everybody eats chocolate around the world. And why would halal not be universal either? Because everybody could eat halal chocolate or halal anything. It's not specific and it's not a unique context. To eat halal is just food. And the ingredients and the way it was put together, that's what matters. But then we went in, we brought in the value of our brand to suit the fact that, A, halal is universal. We're going to be approaching the market as we target, and we will actually address it to the value we're adding, which is the social context of where Patchi fits in your lifestyle. Gen Y was the most obvious market that we were after. When you think about bridal, who's getting married, the Gen Ys, the younger, raising families and having children, also younger. So it's a natural progress of where we stand and what we target in terms of our product collections to be appealing to the Gen Y. And things start, and you can tell from looking at the metrics that things are making sense or no, this is not making sense, and you start pivoting and you start adjusting.
Great.
So
what's fascinating is, you're, and we wish, and I certainly wish Patchi much success, and we'll be following it and hope it further grows. A lot of times we see Muslim entrepreneurs, as I think it was also mentioned earlier, boxed into trying to sell a halal product versus a competitive, high-quality product that has a value proposition that happens to be halal, which seems to be what Patchi is doing, and that's, we wish you the best. I will invite questions, and I see some people standing, so we will have a good, and I'll try to accommodate as many questions as we can. But before we do that, quickly, Michael, one of the great things, Kiva is doing wonderful things, and as you highlighted, a lot of the economically deprived countries are in fact Islamic, Muslim majority countries in the world, in sub-Saharan Africa and Middle East and the Arab world, in Asia, etc. And so it's natural that a lot of your customers would come from a base where Islamic financing or Sharia financing is important. It's fascinating to hear about your success with Card Hassan as well, which is a very hard business model, but one that is an important mix within financing. So where in the Islamic countries are you seeing growth in terms of more of attraction of what Kiva customers are coming, both funding-wise as well as contributing to?
Yeah, it's interesting you said the term customer, because we have so many stakeholders at Kiva. We have, the beneficiaries of the loans. We have the partners who work with the beneficiaries, so the microfinance institutions. And then we also have the lenders who make those loans, and that chain, we're always trying to make the most value. And ultimately, at 0% cost of capital for the microfinance institution that makes a loan, it's something we ask more of our partners to do, is to take on more risk and more cost. And I think that's one of the reasons why Kiva's been able to be effective in helping our partners to increase their Sharia portfolio, because it costs more. It's more cumbersome to administer. Like you said, a Card Hassan loan, that's a loss. It operates at a loss. I think one of the great opportunities that we have here, though, is for people to think, particularly people who are used to giving zakat on a regular basis, to think like, oh, instead of giving that to a charity and the money just goes away and never comes back, why don't I give it to somebody in my homeland? We're trying to reach the diaspora population, so a Lebanese American can go on our website and they can make a loan to somebody. And we have data to show that 92% of our lenders across the board, they don't take their money out of the system. So this could be an alternative form of charity for them. And there's so many places that we're growing now. For example, in Lebanon, to answer your question, there's a big demand for higher education loans. And I think the survey before had said, 80% is it Muslim Americans, were looking for 0% funding for higher education. Well, we see that the world over, particularly in the Middle East, people really are desiring this education. So it's not just higher education, we're also supporting primary and secondary education. So it's something that we're really trying to get our partners to do more of these types of loans.
Great. And, your point about zakat is very interesting. I think it would be, and I don't know the fiqh of, the validity of zakat in context of Kiva model, but your point on just the sadaqah and zakat charity that Muslims give, this as an avenue which also has a return, but you also see a direct result is impressive. Okay, so we'll start with questions. And again, if I can request that if you could state your name and organization if you are associated with, and please make a quick question rather than a statement.
Okay, so hi, my name is Alan. I'm coming on behalf of Al-Hudi University. My question is sort of geared towards all of you, and maybe it'll give the opportunity to gain the question from multiple perspectives. How are you guys approaching Bitcoin in terms of like microfinancing? You can break a Bitcoin into like 1 million fragment units, and then in terms of like the merchant perspective, how are you guys approaching it as an early adoption?
Anyone?
Yeah, we're looking into it. One of the main challenges that we have, so we want people in the Middle East to lend to other people in the Middle East. A place like Lebanon, it's actually difficult because we use PayPal as our main processor, and they use a credit card, and even trying to use it in a credit card, it'll kick out of the system. So somebody in Lebanon today may not be able to make a loan unless they have a credit card that's maybe based in the US or Europe. And so we're looking at Bitcoin as an alternative because, as we get more and more of the mobile transaction technology and just digital technology for transactions, I think Bitcoin's, it's the wave of the future now. The regulators may not think that, but we're definitely looking into that because we'd love to reach a scale where people can lend to other people in their own country, which we can't in some places.
Anyone else?
From an e-commerce standpoint, we see a lot of cross-continent transactions, if you will, through our e-commerce operation. And then we've seen what Michael said, seen already, a lot of issues and challenges in processing payments. And we need a more safer and robust platform for exchange of funds. And we would love to, we're looking at Apple Pay and other solutions as well. PayPal has been rough. It's not always smooth. So.
Okay. All right. So I'll take next question. We don't have to all answer. Feel free to just let me know if you want to jump in. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bilal. I work in the Chief Investment Office at JP Morgan. Quick question, probably more to Aamir, but happy to hear others' thoughts as well. I'm curious as to your outlook on where the base of Islamic capital being mainly GCC, Far East, do you see financial institutions based out of there becoming global players anytime in, say, the next, 20 years or so? I'm thinking mainly from my experience. We were looking at strategic opportunities, for example, in China and Southeast Asia. And one thing to notice was China operates in an interesting model where it has its financial sector closed off pretty much except for to foreign players, except as minority joint venture partners. Meanwhile, we were looking at opportunities in Indonesia. The largest fund managers, the largest insurance companies, the largest banks, in the top 10 list, usually the first 8 or 9 will be foreign players. In some ways, I imagine that might be similar in the GCC and others. So there's this capital base. In some ways, it's been, but now it's predominated by foreign players. But do you see in the longer term that changing? If so, what might what might the path be to that? Quickly,
let me take in the interest of giving everyone an opportunity. Aamir, you can respond to that.
Okay, sure. So if you look at the in the financial sector, if you will,
Thank
the
you,
chain.
Sorry.
The value chain. So in terms of principal investors, of course, we've got a very strong base of principal investing expertise in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. In terms of the next part of the value chain, which is the asset management and intermediation, that's extremely weak. compared to the strength of the principal investing business. What's happening, and this is really a generational challenge that we're going through, is first there's more in-house capability or expertise being built within these principal investment shops. So that's happening. And also there is a development to some degree of local and regional investment asset managers who are trying to fill that gap. Our firm being an example of that. The way they tend to evolve is that they start by being quite domestic and then regional and then aspire to an international presence. So I think to answer your question in brief, today the Islamic capital centers are much stronger as principals than they are as managers or advisors or arrangers. And I think it'll be certainly about 25, 30 years before we'll see a full evolution to have all parts of that value chain. But it's a strategic imperative that's well recognized, and there are efforts underway to enhance that.
Aamir, who would be some of the big players today?
In that space?
In that space.
Sure. So if we take, for example, a firm called Sedco Capital is a good example. So Sedco Capital is a Saudi-based institution that began by investing essentially the principal investments of a single family. And then they started managing money on behalf of others. And now they have funds that are listed in Europe, which also, besides being Sharia compliant, are also ethical funds. So they're slowly but surely broadening their appeal. So I'd say Sedco is an example.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Next question, please.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Mashoud Abukari. I'm an analyst at Société Générale, the French investment bank. My question is more directed towards Aamir. I guess what would be your comments or advice to someone with a conventional background and who wants to penetrate into the Islamic or share compliant banking side? And I guess you can comment on how to get in there. Thank you.
Sure. Well, there's a great saying from our Prophet, peace be upon him, which he says, the best of you before Islam is the best of you in Islam when he or she understands what they're doing. So someone who's very good at financial services from a conventional background certainly has a role to play or can contribute greatly to Islamic finance. I think in summary, it really depends on your skill set and your expertise and how much that's required in the Islamic finance industry. Certainly banking is one place where we require a lot more professionals. So banking skills are very useful. Similarly, on the principal investing side, as I've highlighted, that's a huge gap. And we require people with more expertise in that. So depending on what role people play in their current institutions, there can certainly be opportunities. Of course, they tend to be overseas. But we do see a growing community of American and Canadian expats in that part of the world. And I think that there is, the general trend is to hire from conventional institutions people with similar skill sets.
Can you talk a little bit about the cost of that, of setting up?
The cost of?
Setting up Sharia products.
Oh, sure. So the cost of setting up Sharia products generally there's a relatively small fixed cost, as you've seen up front when you establish Sharia compliant businesses. But generally, in the first year of operations, you'll recover the setup costs. And what financial institutions have found in the Muslim majority world is when you offer the similar products and services to what you do conventionally, when you offer Islamic equivalents, you find a lot of acceptance and good reception for that. So basically, it goes back to the same point that the good retail banks tend to be the good Islamic retail banks, and the good asset managers tend to be the good Islamic asset managers.
Now, in terms of I'm just curious about the Sharia advisement, the costs of that. I've heard that they can be quite high to get the fatwa to.
Not really. I mean, I think it's really I think that's said a lot, but it's generally overblown because it's a fixed cost, and so obviously when you have decent volumes, it becomes very negligible. So we can talk more about it, but the costs are surprisingly low.
Okay. In terms of the gentleman's question about getting into Islamic finance, one thing to just keep in mind in terms of the size of Islamic banking today, it is still about 1% of the total global banking assets. So it's a very small, so you have to keep that in context. If you're at Merrill Lynch or wherever, that's an important thing. And in fact, if you take all of the current conventional banking assets in the Muslim world, that together still becomes about 3 to 4% of the total banking assets that are there. So in terms of volume, even though it's a fast-growing space, it's still relatively slow. Okay.
Hello, my name is Shimon Warden. I'm with Safe Consultancy. My question is more to address a structural issue that I've noticed. Bringing in using foundations in economic development districts or economic development foundations, neighborhood development foundations, or sometimes called neighborhood development corporations, EDDCs, bringing that in a Muslim halal context to bridge the difference between, sovereign major investors and entrepreneurs. Do you think that that space is available presently, and what could we do to facilitate that type of transitions, both at the decision level and planning level, but also at the grassroots level as well? Thank you.
So it sounds like questions are going to, and I'll request and encourage people to have a diverse set of questions, just so we can value from the wonderful input that Rick and Ziad also have. But Aamir, could you take that?
Yes, it's an opportunity, and the way to make it more appealing is yield. Basically, what's happened is that because again, going back to the Gulf currencies tend to be pegged to the U.S. dollar. U.S. dollar yields are next to nothing. However, inflation is strong in the GCC, so they require yield-bearing investments. If you can structure these development corporations to kick off some yield, U.S. dollar denominated, of course, you'll find a lot of reception. So we can talk more about that separately.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Abu Tahir, and I'm from Time Television, which is served the South Asian and Bangladeshi community in North America. My question is, the Muslim community, very growing community in North America, and there's a lot of people, they want to do business, but they don't have funds. So do you know any company which lend the microfinance, the people who want to do business, where the compliance with Sharia, and as well as any Islamic banking system in North America? If you can just briefly tell us.
So briefly, I'll comment and I'll direct Michael to respond. But in general, we have a relatively thriving Islamic banking space here in the U.S. Although, as our studies shown both of them, the demand is relative to supply has a big gap, especially when it comes to business financing. So I think there is much to be said in terms of Sharia-compliant business financing here in the U.S. And I know some of the firms like Devon and University and others are looking to address that, but it's still at a much, much meager level. But Michael.
Actually, it's a great question. So we have something called Kiva Zip, and that's our direct model. So before I was talking, we work with partners, but in the United States and also in Kenya, using mobile transaction technology, we give out free loans to people. So you can go to Brooklyn right now and you can get a loan from Kiva Zip. We're in different cities around the U.S., St. Louis, Michigan, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco. We actually have this model where we don't use partners and it's completely free. So we do have free loans on Kiva. They are Sharia compliant from that perspective.
Right. So just to emphasize again, within the U.S., we have loan options within the Kiva model for Sharia compliant financing.
Exactly. It's called Kiva Zip.
Kiva Zip. Okay, thank you. All right. I have, I think, about 5 more minutes. So if there are any other questions, if not, then I will pose a couple more questions myself. So, and I'll, with all due respect, I'll steer to this way. Again, the context of this session was around the opportunity that the global Islamic lifestyle space, including food, travel, and other spaces, present to us here in the U.S. So, Rick, I think we were talking earlier about how your journey led to it, and if you can share with us how you think broadly the industry in the U.S. Obviously there's a lot of American business and trade that goes into U.S. and our data show that in terms of international food, to give you an example, meat and live animal exports to Muslim majority countries, 90% of those imports into Muslim majority countries are from non-Muslim majority countries. So the biggest suppliers of meat and live animals are Brazil, Australia, France, US. And in that context, US's relative share is actually quite low to that export. So I think just connecting back to our conversation on this halal opportunity and the opportunity for US in this space, what do you think will help it? Or is there, are there structural limitations? Obviously, Brazil is able to be one of the major exporters, so that there's no reason U.S. cannot in that context. But what are your thoughts?
Well, as I mentioned, the vast majority of imported beef that's certified organic and grass-fed is by choice halal. We benefit from that strategic decision that these ranchers and processors around the world have made. And it's extremely high quality. So again, it's not just the compliance and the blessing, it's the sort of pervasive flight to quality that it's as much about, perhaps, particularly for a non-Muslim, the quality, the inherent value that's in the beef, how it was treated during its life, how it grazed, how it was transported, and then, of course, ultimately how it was harvested. So that value goes all the way back, in our case, all the way back to before the cattle is even born. I mean, it's literally dedicated its entire life cycle to being prime beef for hamburgers. So it's an interesting connection point. I would say that for us, and just to comment sort of on a reasonable adjacency to the microfinance conversation, and just bring out a different element of Elevation Burger, and that is, the franchising opportunity for investors here locally in the United States and abroad. We do take our organic beef, our product to the market through franchisees, and so there are opportunities in the local markets. Many of our franchisees were attracted to the mission of organic grass-fed beef, and that they're missional-driven people, and some of them are Muslim. And in their faith, they're trying to bring to the community, to their mosque, to their community center, a value that benefits the entire community. Just to quote one of the other panelists earlier, who said, "I believe we're here to benefit our society, for the community," and that's a complete connection with the way we feel. We want to bring this fantastic product and this healthy option to more and more communities, and one of the ways that we do that is through franchising. So I would, just make a shameless plug here. If you're interested in microfinance in the local, right down on the ground, grass level, and want to, grassroots level, want to invest in Sharia-compliant businesses, I think Elevation Burger is a good opportunity in many, many markets.
Great. I think with that, we'll wrap up. This, I believe, is a conversation that's just started in terms of the context of the global Islamic economy and the American Muslim market and its potential. But I want to thank all our panelists. It's been a very diverse and fascinating conversation, and please join me in thanking them.